During this week's video, we have a must-have part that you will need if you are doing a Crown Vic swap on your vehicle. Welcome back to the channel. We are working on the Durango again, and we're doing some cable management. Well, in this case, hose management. We're deleting the AC on this Durango. But we're also moving a bunch of wires around because if we're gonna do this Durango cart thing, we might as well make it look like a cart. We've already removed a lot of exterior parts here, including the fenders. If you're new to the channel, yes, this is a Durango rat rod Crown Vic Durango cart. That is currently our burnout beater. So we just put the Crown Vic front end under this Durango. I'm gonna relocate a lot of these cables because like the fuse box sat on the inner fender here. And if you don't know, these fenders were pretty rusty and clapped out. The inner fenders were pretty decent, but the outside fenders, not so good. So we're gonna try to find a new home for the fuse box. And on the passenger side, so we gotta relocate the computer as well. So I've already been moving some wires. We're gonna relocate this wire too, which comes through the front clip here, this wire. So I wanna put that up on the firewall because eventually all this will go away. Not yet, but in preparation to relocate all these wires, all that needs to happen. And we're also doing this because we can get to the steering shaft. So the steering shaft right here needs to connect down to our rack and pinion on our Crown Vic front, which this is the magic piece. If you guys are doing the Crown Vic swap, this universal joint is a must-have. It is the double D 3/4, has that special triangle coupler that goes on that rack and pinion for the Crown Vic. So this is a must-have. And it looks like we're gonna be able to use that pre-existing steering shaft from the Durango. A little early to tell, but this is one of the pieces we need. And that steering shaft already has the double D. So hopefully we can just shorten it and the moons will align.
Whoa, guys, look at the moon. Oh my god, this is definitely not normal.
And we'll have steering on this Durango rod. So that is another reason why we have moved a lot of these wires and cables and hoses out of the way. We already did the brakes. So if you haven't seen that video, that was the last video. We did the brakes on that Crown Vic. So we already have brakes plumbed and functional. Now we're just working on the steering. And we got some parts ordered also. So we can use this factory sway bar also to put on the Durango frame. So let's continue to take some of this mess off. And we'll deal with that later. And we'll see if we can get steering on the Crown Vic Durango cart. Well, this is interesting. I'm pulling this cable from the front underneath the radiator. And one cable went to the computer up there, so that will be easy to just reconnect that through the firewall. But this cable went to the cruise controller. Why would this cable come all the way through the front of the Durango when you already have cables up here coming up and over and through? I don't know, weird. All right, let's continue to pull this cable through and then we can focus on that steering. check out the room now. There's so much room for activities.
We did it! We did it! It looks amazing!
Look at that! That looks like what you would buy from a store.
It should have been
Look
a
at
book
all the
bed
sports
along.
space.
So
We
much,
do aerobics in here.
so many activities.
Do step class.
It's making my head spin.
This is the factory union joint that came off the Crown Vic. As you can tell, it's like offset a little bit, and it's just really janky. You would have to get like a coupler, a double D coupler to maybe couple against that, or this universal joint. Yeah, we're just not going to use that. So we're going to go with this universal joint. Here's the part number and the description, and I'll put this link in the description of the video as well. But we'll be putting this feller on. I already test fitted to make sure it worked. This is the pin. This screw comes in where that triangle fitting is on the rack and pinion. It just slips right on. I've already made a mark because there is a certain orientation on the rack and pinion as well. Orientation that this goes on. I'll slip it down here and I'll give you guys a good view of it. And then I'll put this guy on once we finalize the deal. So there's the universal joint on the rack and pinion on the Crown Vic front and the rack and pinion. So you can see the mark there that I made because of that triangle coupler in the shaft on the rack and pinion. Do some cutting on this factory steering shaft. It is collapsible, so I'm just gonna cut it long, see if we can make it work. We'll just cut the shaft long on that double D and go from there. Here is the factory universal joint that we just cut off the steering shaft. And here's our shiny new part for the Crown Vic. So now we just got to see if it fits. Well, it's not gonna fit. Come back here. So as you can see, we're about an inch too long before we can get on the Crown Vic rack there. And we are cut all the way back. Here, let me see if I can get this back out. Another thing, I'm not really liking this angle finagle we got going on here. So we cannot go back any farther in that shaft as you slide it all the way, and that's the furthest and the shortest it will get. So now I think we're gonna try to get a little creative.
You made that, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Well, that is pretty impressive, isn't it, George?
And cut this an inch off of this shaft. I think it would fall out then, because here, let me bring you closer. So if we massage and cut this shaft off here, this is actually what's keeping it from sliding all the way out. There, it looks like it's indented and it stops it. I'm not super concerned about, so I say we do some more cutting. Cut an inch off of this shaft without cutting this shaft. See where we go from there. Would you believe me if I told you it worked? Well, we have steering on the Crown Vic front on a Durango. Is it good? No. There's quite a catch in the steering wheel, which I was afraid of with that aggressive pitch on the steering shaft. Yeah, there's quite a bind. But does it steer? Don't know what that squeaky noise is. Sway bar. But we got steering, and it's pretty gross. It's gonna be good enough for now, because guess what? This body's changing. I don't wanna put a new steering column in this Durango, because that's what it's gonna have to take. We're gonna have to put a custom steering column in this Durango, which might actually happen if my idea of putting a Willys cab on this Durango, I might try to keep the firewall of the Durango and graft the body of the Willys on top of it. So maybe I do get a steering column and try to put it in this Durango if we end up keeping the firewall in all the dash components. But here is the shaft.
Hi, I'm looking for
Shaft.
And that pitch is aggressively gross, but there is a steering in a Durango from a Crown Vic. So we move on from here? I think so. Because we just got a box of goodies from Amazon. It is the sway bar bushings and the brackets. And I didn't necessarily need the bushings because the bushings on this sway bar look halfway decent, good enough. But I couldn't buy just the bracket. The bracket actually came with these bolts that have the flags on there. So I believe when we make our mounts, we can make a big enough hole where we slip this bolt in and then it's stuck in there with the flag, therefore leaving us a spot to put the bracket on and then put the nut on. But now we have to build custom sway bar brackets because there's no sway bar brackets on this Durango for a Crown Vic. I was hoping it didn't have to come to this, but we're gonna have to cut the frame again. And here's why. We got some bungee action going on as we have the sway bar lifted with the bungees. And under here we got the brackets. But as you can see, this side was where the steering box sat. So the frame actually droops down a little bit to make up for where that steering box sat on the factory Durango. The other side isn't the same. So the sway bar is up against the frame on this side, on the driver's side. And now we're on the passenger side, and you can see the frame doesn't jaunt down. So we have quite the gap. But look how close we are from the rack and pinion and the tie rod end to the sway bar. So I think the best plan of attack would be moving the sway bar up instead of making a bracket for this side, leaving us to have to cut this section out of the frame to move the sway bar up. Yeah, so that's gonna happen. I mean, this stuff is expected when you're putting a Ford Crown Vic front under a four-wheel drive Durango that doesn't look like a Durango. Let's bust out that death wheel.
I would like to introduce you to an item that we typically refer to as the death wheel.
After we cut that section out of the frame, let me show you how things are. This is the passenger side, which we did not cut out, but now we're able to, bring that gap much closer. This will go all the way up. I just have the bungee cord on this side, and it does kind of make sense that the sway bar would be at the same level, or maybe a little higher than the front end. And we do have much better clearance here now with the tie rod and the rack and pinion when it's turned. Here on the driver's side, this is where the work's gonna come into play. There's the section cut out. Now you can see that we can bring that sway bar up much higher and we got better clearance.
I get a free turn! A turn to play my ultimate spell!
Yeah, get him, Jeff. You sassy elf.
Oh, hey, Clarence. What? How?
Jeff, I found all the stuff from your scavenger hunt.
Put the sway bar and the tie rod ends. So now we just need to make a plate to go in that section we cut out. And another thing that I was kind of factoring in, but we kind of lucked out as well, is the sway bar underneath the oil pan. So yeah, it's like 1 inch from the oil pan. So that's working too. So here's some scrap metal I pulled from the yard. For real, I pulled it from the backyard. I just been piling scraps on the back side of the house here. Until, you know, spring cleaning, right? Yeah. All right, let's cut some metal. After rethinking of cutting some metal, which we will, I just think we should just drill a couple holes on the passenger side there and fix that side first, and then we can take it down and out. Then we know how much to build and cut on this side. Well, we got some holes drilled in the frame. And we have bolts hanging out of the frame. There's a little trick I figured out. Got these gloves, these cheaper thin gloves, and tuck your sleeve into your glove, because when you're underneath and drilling, those metal hot shavings like to go down your sleeves. So that was a neat little trick. Let me show you those bolts hanging underneath the frame. They're gonna work. Looking pretty snazzy, huh? Just drilled some holes. Now the bracket will fit up through those holes. And to drill the holes, we just used the stepper bit. So we just used the stepper bit, and then we were able to drill the size we needed for the bolt. And then we drilled a big giant one. That's why we have the big stepper bit on here, because we had another one on this drill as well, a smaller one. That stepper bit that I love so much from Harbor Freight, that Hercules stepper bit. This one's the cheap one, but we were just going for the big hole. And yeah, and we just worked this back and forth between the two big holes so we can slide that bolt through. Now let me get off my back and go cut some metal like we talked about earlier. Yeah, let's do that. I got a new idea on what metal we should cut to box that in. Right here, this section. This bolt almost fits through. So there's one less hole that we need to drill. And then we'll just put the bracket on here, mark our holes, get our bolts all set in here, cut this section out, and then we have our plate. And this is also the same thickness as the frame. So when we're welding, you know, we have one less little battle when we have the same metal thickness that we're welding with the frame. And then that other piece of metal that I had was quite a bit thicker. And the reason I'm cutting this section off, because a lot of this front end is gonna change when this becomes a Willys pickup. And do you guys wanna update on that Willys pickup? This is the part where you say, yes, we wanna update. So if you guys are active followers of the channel, a couple months ago, our local lawn tractor that we used around the yard, pulling vehicles into the garage, moving all sorts of stuff around the property, yeah, we parted that out. And I had plans for that motor. The plans were, I don't believe were ever revealed. We were gonna put them in our golf cart that we got for free. We were gonna put that motor in that golf cart that we got for free. It hasn't been on the channel, just some posts maybe on socials. Yeah, so change of direction. We got a couple $100 for that motor. And now we officially started an envelope. If you guys are Dave Ramsey people, you know that. So we started an envelope for purchasing a Willys pickup. So kind of exciting news. That just happened like an hour ago. So we sold that motor and now we have some money put towards our Willys pickup. What's for dinner? My broom? This dog. I tell you. Very special in many ways. that is a wrap on this video. We got the sway bar mounted, we got the steering hooked up, and I want to tell you, I've been spraying the factory universal joint with this PB blaster, and it's actually quite better. It's still not good, but it's better than it was, especially for how gnarly that angle finagle is on that steering shaft. So optimistic about that when we take this Durango cart for its first test drive with the Crown Vic front, which that will not be this video, and it should be the next video. We still have to plumb the power steering to the rack, and we gotta figure out what to do with our spaghetti mess of the wiring that we have going on, and see about maybe putting the hood back on. We gotta fit the wheels yet, whatever wheels we're gonna run, and then hopefully go do some burnouts and see how this front end handles on the side roads. We won't be taking it on any major roads or highways because we still have to 4-link the rear. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time.